All right, I've got On to Richmond 2 going here. And in this case, not even On to Richmond or Grant Takes Command, which are both included in there. And they were originally two separate games. On to Richmond, the original On to Richmond from back in the old Avalon Hill days of the Great Campaigns series, was very difficult to find, very expensive. I did end up getting a copy of Grant Takes Command, which is there next to the other Great Campaigns, along with Stonewall's Last Battle, and I had a copy of Stonewall in the Valley as well from the old Avalon Hill days. I think Grant Takes Command, yeah, that was actually an MMP game. You can see there on the logo, but it was still, the bookcase style size box, like the old Avalon Hill games. But I was able to get a copy of that and had played it a number of years ago now. It was never quite, it was expensive. I mean, I think I paid probably $70 for it or something like that. So it was expensive, but not as nearly as expensive as On to Richmond, which was, like 120 or higher for going rate for copies of that. So I never did get a copy of On to Richmond. And then when they announced that they were reprinting, after they did Roads to Gettysburg 2 and Stonewall Jackson's Way 2, they've been doing these reprints of the older titles. When they announced they were doing On to Richmond 2 and it was going to include Grant Takes Command, that was really cool. But even cooler than both of those things is the Petersburg campaign, which was going to be an entirely new system, or a campaign for this system. And the thought that, wow, there's never really been, I mean, talk about one of your least gamed Civil War campaigns, the Petersburg campaign, because it was just a siege, with a bunch of cavalry raids and stuff going on around it and probing from infantry. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a siege, and your typical grognards all just want to play Robert E. Lee and the Civil War battles of maneuver that Lee and Jackson were doing. Nobody wants to recreate the hard work of the Union actually winning the war. So, it never gets gamed. So when I knew there was going to be the Petersburg campaign added to this On to Richmond 2 series or game, I was very excited. So, although it has taken me a while to actually get it to the table, I finally busted it out, simply starting with the first scenario, which is my best achievement. And unlike other games in the series, like this one, each game in here gets its own book. So the Petersburg campaign has its own complete campaign book, which is 64 pages long. So they love their like big, thick campaign books in this series, because that is just loaded up with dense text of scenario rules. But there's a separate book for each one. The Grant Takes Command has its own book. On to Richmond has its own book, which I like. When it gets this big and unwieldy, they couldn't have a 250-page campaign book. That's just, they had already kind of hit the limit on. Let's try zooming in. I don't know why it's not letting me zoom in, but they had already really hit their limit with Roads to Gettysburg 2, which had a very, very thick, almost one of those block-bound kind of, as opposed to just the folded over stapled thing like these are. It was a actual glued bound rule book. It was so thick, or campaign book. But anyway, looking here, the first scenario, it's a simple 2-turn scenario. It's called My Best Achievement, which is what Baldy Smith, the Union, 18th Corps commander, called his failure to take a barely defended Petersburg, which clearly would have completely changed the direction of the war. Well, I don't know that would have changed the direction. The direction was already kind of headed in a specific direction at this point, but definitely would have changed certainly the way the Overland campaign ended, and whether there would have been a siege of Petersburg at all. Had he taken Petersburg on June 12th, June 15th, Richmond would not have been. The Confederates would not have been able to hold on to Richmond. That was the whole point behind Petersburg. The whole reason that Grant made a move towards it was because if they could take Petersburg, which was the main rail line into Richmond, Richmond itself would have to be abandoned, which is indeed, once Petersburg fell after the siege, exactly what happened. The Confederates had to abandon Richmond. But Baldy Smith cautiously advances up to the outskirts of the city, pushes back some militia, some weak units, but otherwise doesn't really press the issue to take the city. And naturally, as the Confederates had done throughout the entire war, they're able to rush enough people there to prevent any sort of Union success. So that's all. This is just a simple two-turn scenario starting the game. Petersburg is here, under these stacks of units. You can see the red text there. The city hexes are actually right here. These are the two city hexes for Petersburg. These other surrounding hexes are all redoubt hexes, including the one that Smith is currently sitting on. He actually had some success. He starts up here, his 18th Corps units, and quickly moved down here, pushed the Confederate units out of this space initially, although they've since reclaimed it, and then eliminated the Confederate unit that was in this space. He was, looking at a 4-to-1 advantage in both of those attacks because I had two divisions stacked with him, and was able to launch 2 assaults with those 2 stacks of units both times because I rolled a 1 on my assault roll with Smith, which was great because that allowed both units in his stack to attack, which was a strength of 17. The best the Confederates could do was 2, doubled to 4 under the breastworks they were under. But, that was still a +3 with a +1 for the assault. So a +4. And I think in another one of the cases, I actually had a flanking. I took this hex first, pushed the Confederates out of there. They ended up back here. And then Smith attacked here, where there was another, entrenched Confederate unit. And there he had a flank advantage because at the time, the only other Confederates were here. So he had a 5-hex flank advantage. So that was an extra +2. And that enabled him to eliminate. I rolled well enough. I rolled like a +10 difference or something, which killed all the Confederates that were in that space. So that was Wise's division here. And so the mistake that I made, though, really was when Smith had taken this space, and at that point his units were at a fatigue of 2. He should have moved to here, which this space, now there's a giant stack of Confederates there, but this space, you can see a little red star, or maybe not from this angle, but there is a little red star there. That means that it's a significant victory hex for this scenario. They'd get 60 victory points if they could move there and hold it. And, had I moved Smith there, because he could have moved from here to here, even with Confederates there, they would have spent their entire movement allowance to get into that space. I don't know why I didn't do it. I just said, I want to attack and drive the Confederates out of these entrenchments around the city. But now, it's unlikely I'm going to be able to take that hex again. With these units stacked here, Hoke's a better commander than anybody that was there before. They're going to be heavily entrenched. They're already building entrenchments. This is basically the end of turn 1 that I'm at right now, by the way. There'll be a second turn where I'll have one more turn chance to try and gain some more, either gain Petersburg hexes or gain some of these surrounding readout hexes, which are only going to be worth 20 victory points. So, you know, at the best, I'm looking at like probably a Union marginal victory at best at this point. Whereas if I'd taken this hex right here, we'd be looking at least a Union, probably a Union decisive victory, but certainly a Union substantial victory. So I'm already feeling a little bit like Baldy Smith, where I made the wrong choice outside the city of Petersburg and ended up attacking, you know, some weak units here instead of taking the actual valuable prize of not an actual city hex. The city hexes, again, are here. If I were to take one of those, I'd get plus 80 victory points and would be guaranteed a smashing Union victory. But if you can take any space that's adjacent to one of the Petersburg hexes, that's worth 60 victory points. So so even, you know, if I can take this hex, I could still potentially, I guess, get 60. If I can take this hex here, you know, I moved the Confederates up here, and, you know, maybe that was a mistake with the Confederates. Maybe I should have put them here. Because now, as you can see, Baldy Smith, his guys are still going to be kind of gassed even after the recovery phase next turn because they're at 4s right now. But you can see down here you got Hancock's corps. And these units are massive. Here's Barlow's division, and he's got 15 guys. I think these each have 15 or 16 guys. So there's just a ton of troops here. And the Confederates really don't have, these are all 3 and 4 stacks. This is a 2, and then these are all 3s and 4s in these stacks here, all of Hoke's guys. The best they can do is bring down these guys up here, which are frozen. This is Beauregard and his units in these forts. That's a 2. He's not going to be any help. And I think Beauregard himself is up here with Bushrod Johnson. Oh, there are 3. So yeah, the Confederates don't really have anything numbers-wise that's going to be able to help. That's going to be able to add to what they have down here. So I may have to actually shift these guys around next turn just to keep Hancock from walking in to Petersburg from here. So I don't know. Maybe hope is not all lost for the Union. I was so busy, you know, despairing over my lack of moving into that clear, you know, victory point hex that I didn't really think about. And I thought, well, I'll get Hancock moving down here to try and come at it from this side because that'll really stretch the Confederates, and they just don't have the numbers to defend all the hexes that they really need to defend here. So with Hancock available to try and put pressure on this side, yeah, maybe we can get an adjacent to Petersburg hex, which will give the Union a much better chance at more of either a decisive or substantial victory. So, and I believe it's only Burnside, yeah, who is, so there's also, the Union also has over here is Meade, and Burnside's corps is under here. They're frozen until turn 2, so they're not really going to be any addition to this battle because they're going to be completely exhausted just reaching Petersburg. But yeah, there weren't any restrictions that I recall seeing on yeah, Hancock's corps totally available to move on turn 1. So yeah, for turn 2 they are going to be able to put a lot of pressure on the Confederates. So we'll see what happens, but I just wanted to record some video of this system. I haven't played it in a long time, and I don't know, maybe the last video that I did was Battle Above the Clouds. Trying to think, I don't know that I ever did any Roads to Gettysburg 2 video. I played Stonewall's Last Battle. I played Chancellorsville. I actually played it twice because the first time I completely ruined, like messed up the Union deployment, and it just got destroyed. And I wanted to see if I could actually make Hooker's plan come off, and then didn't realize that, oh, you can't have a thin line against Confederate forces. Like, the Union needs to be much more organized, and because otherwise Jackson's corps will just scythe right through them like they're not even there. The game does favor Confederates in the combat system there. But this one I really wanted to do just because the opportunity to game any aspect of Petersburg is so limited, that I really wanted to take the opportunity here to play this. So yeah, we are underway with the Petersburg campaign, and I'm not actually playing the campaign. You can play the full Petersburg campaign, and look at the freaking turn track for it. That's a turn track for a siege right there. But I'm actually just doing the basic game. I wanted to just kind of dip my toe in, run through some of the basic scenarios, instead of just trying to do the huge giant campaign game, because lately that's just been a recipe for me to set something up, not actually take any turns, and just tear it all back down again. And I really wanted to play this and not just have that weight of that obligation of the giant campaign hanging over me. And so this was a good way to do it. There's lots of little tiny bite-sized scenarios in all of the different campaigns of this series. And so, it's no different for Petersburg, even though it's a siege. There's like 8 or 10, smaller scenarios. Some of them 1 and 2 turns. There's others, 4, 5, 6, 8 turns. I mean, there's a nice mix of some lengthier games, lengthier scenarios, and little tiny scenarios. So, but I wanted to start with the first scenario, which was the sort of the great tragedy of Petersburg, which was that Baldy Smith kind of dithered around and didn't just steamroll his way into the city, which is really what he should have done. So yeah, there we have it. We'll see how this one turns out.